Well, hello to all of my methodical researchers out there. This is a video about headnotes. In our last video, we talked about all of the different ways you can find cases, including using cases to find cases. Headnotes are important because they provide us with a very useful way of accomplishing just that, but in a more granular, issue-specific fashion. Now, in this video, we'll talk about some of the general features of headnotes, and then we'll discuss the best ways of putting those headnotes to use before we look at a few examples. Now, you should know that headnotes are added to cases by Westlaw and Lexis. Of course, this means that you will never ever cite a headnote in a brief or use one in a legal argument because they're not part of the actual opinion. Instead, the headnotes are tools for finding and understanding the law. And for each case, the headnotes are going to break down all of the legal issues involved and give each its own distinct headnote. Now, the ways that Westlaw and Lexis accomplish this are actually really different. Westlaw has editors who actually read all of the cases, analyze all of the issues that each one covers, and then write all of the headnotes. On the other hand, Lexis headnotes are automatically generated, just based on the text of the opinion. And in practice, these do create very different results. Westlaw headnotes tend to break each opinion down further into more distinct legal issues than we usually see with Lexis, and they also operate on Westlaw more akin to a summary than you would see on Lexis, where the headnotes are just always going to take the form of direct quotes from the opinion because that's just how they're generated. Now, in and of itself, the way that headnotes break things down and quote or summarize the opinion can be quite helpful. For example, headnotes for both services tend to be written in a way that uses the various synonyms for common legal terms, which makes it easier to search for a concept that courts might refer to in different ways. But these headnotes are also part of a much bigger system. Both Westlaw and Lexis have identified all of the legal issues that arise in all of the cases and organize them into a comprehensive system that outlines the entirety of the law, or at least aims to do that. In Westlaw, we call that system the key number system, and you may also hear more old-fashioned people refer to it as the digest system. In Lexis, we just refer to the different issues as legal topics. And the cool thing about the headnotes for your case is that they are going to connect you to where that legal issue is located within this bigger system, within this outline of the law. And this allows you to specifically look for cases, to target cases that just address this one very specific legal issue. And as you might imagine, this can just be extremely useful. Okay, class, what time is it? That's right, it's everyone's favorite time. It's example time. Let's return to our fraud fact pattern, where we are trying to figure out whether Peachtree Partners defrauded Juanita when they didn't tell her that the promotion she asked about did not apply to the apartment she ultimately leased. I've went ahead and pulled up that easy serve convenience stores case that we found in our previous video using the statutory annotations, and we were interested in this one in particular because it discusses the import of silence upon a fraud claim. So if we scroll down, here we have our fabulous headnotes. And we can see that they do cover a pretty wide array of issues. And this is going to be like the overall topic within the key number system. And you can actually see all of those top line topics if you just navigate directly into the key number system. There we go. These are all of the overarching topics in Westlaw's outline of the law. And this usually isn't a way that I would actually search for anything, like from this page, from this outline page. But I do think it is helpful just to kind of visualize everything that is encompassed in this system that they have devised. But back to Easy Serve. We can see that we start with some head notes on damages, move on to a few head notes on the overall topic of fraud, some more damages head notes, lots of damages it looks like, and then close it out with a couple of procedural type issues noted in the head notes here. And you can see that even a short case like this one, I mean, this is only 10 pages, really can cover a pretty wide array of topics and issues. And that is one of the trickier things about researching case law. When you get into, more complex cases, like that Bostock case that we looked at that was almost 100 pages long, I mean, it just contains so much within its pages. So we would go ahead and browse and skim through these until we read this little blurb for the 7th head note here. Fraud does not have to be committed solely by willful misrepresentation. Instead, it is subtle and can be accomplished in an infinite number of ways, including signs and tricks, and even, in some instances, by silence. Yep, that is the one that we want, because we're thinking, hey, maybe it speaks to the issue of whether the silence of that leasing agent is ultimately going to be germane to Juanita's fraud claim. Now, as I alluded to earlier, the head notes can make it just super easy to navigate the opinion and the different issues that it contains. If you click on the number itself, that will take you right where the issue in this head note is actually discussed in the opinion itself. And it's not too surprising to see that, what's like the head note here basically just quotes the opinion, because with the phrasing here, it kind of seems like the court was maybe trying to be quotable. But we do get some added info from the text of the opinion. The case that this court is citing to for part of that proposition here, the Stanford case, that might be helpful. And we also get some facts as the court applies this legal rule to the factual situation in Easy Serve. And that would be essential to really understanding how the rule really works and what this Easy Serve case really truly means. Now, clicking on the number in the opinion text will take you just right back to our head note. And I'm sure you can see how these shortcuts would be extremely helpful, especially when you're trying to quickly ascertain a case's relevance before you invest a lot of time into reading all of the details about everything in the case. Now, back to our head note here, we can see that our right sidebar contains a little excerpt from Westlaw's comprehensive outline of the law, an excerpt that contains this particular issue. And this can be pretty helpful, for example, if you just decide that this key number, like the narrowest key number, is just like way too specific for you. You could go up a level from deceptive statements or acts here to like the broader topic of elements of actual fraud, which I can just pull up here in a new tab so you can check it out. And when we do that, it's going to show us all of the cases in our jurisdiction that discuss this key number. And you can also navigate up and down to like the different levels of the key number system's outline of the law. And there is a learning curve to kind of surfing the outline and using the head notes in this way. But once you get adept at, kind of navigating it, it can be pretty useful. It will usually make more sense to focus on trying to find cases on like your narrowest key number first, and then only surfing around the outline itself if you just don't find what you were looking for, if you don't find anything too promising under that more specific key number. Okay, so yeah, back to our head note. The other really cool thing that we can do with head notes is to find cases that actually cite our easy serve case for this specific legal issue. And it looks like there are 2 cases that do that here. We'll go ahead and navigate to them. And it looks like we have 2 cases that cite this easy serve convenience stores case for this particular legal issue, although one of them is unpublished, as you can see from the citation here. So you probably wouldn't want to use that one. I'd also like to direct your attention to the depth indicator, which shows us how thoroughly this particular case treated our easy serve case on this particular issue, like how in-depth was the analysis there. And then in addition to the cases, we also are going to have various other documents on our sidebar here that have cited easy serve for this particular issue. Most of these are going to be briefs or other litigation documents, but they can be very helpful in some situations. So yeah, if we had decided that easy serve was a relevant case for us on this issue of silence as it relates to fraud, this would be a great way to find a potentially useful case with Clothier. I'm not sure about the pronunciation there, with this Clothier case, although we would definitely want to investigate this red flag to see whether this is in fact good law on this particular point. But yeah, that's only one case, which is nice, but we would like to have more if possible. So we'll go back to our head note. And then we will just navigate to like the particular key number for this specific issue. And that gives us 7 cases to look at. However, we would probably want to go ahead and filter out those related federal cases, because those, as you know, would be persuasive authority, and we're mainly focused on mandatory authority. And after we do that, it's going to leave us with 6 cases that are potentially going to be like very relevant because we know that they discuss this very specific issue. And that overall is pretty illustrative of the general method that you would usually use for head notes. You would find a case through probably a treatise or a statutory annotation, maybe a search, and then you would identify the head note of its most germane or relevant legal issue, and then you would take a look at the citing references for that head note. And then finally, you would take a look at the key number itself, maybe adjust the jurisdiction as needed. And it really is just a great and very direct way to find extremely useful cases. It's a powerful tool. It does take some getting used to, so I would encourage you to maybe just take a few minutes to pull up a case and get used to navigating the key number system, and that way you'll be more likely to actually put it to work when you do your research. So let's take a look at the very same case on Lexis so I can show you how their system works. And it's mostly pretty similar, although you'll quickly realize that it's just not nearly as robust as the Westlaw system. And of course, the overall organization does vary quite a bit. So the head notes are going to be located in like the same general place. If we scroll down, we can see that, it has like the same, like a head note for the same legal issue here on silence and its relevance to a fraud claim. And we can do the same trick where we use the number to navigate to the discussion of that issue within the opinion itself. And we can also do the same trick where we navigate right back to the head note. And if we want to see cases that cite this particular case for this particular issue within this head note, we can do basically the same thing that we just did on Westlaw by clicking on Shepherdized, narrow by this head note here. Although do note that it doesn't include that Clothier case that we saw on Westlaw. So often you will find differences between the way Westlaw and Lexis tend to classify the cases, the way they tend to organize the different issues that come up. And as I mentioned earlier, like they both quote the court's language here because it's just very quotable language, but all of the Lexis head notes are going to consist of quotations, whereas that's not going to be the case on Westlaw, where editors actually do draft them. And the other big difference that you run into here between the two systems is that Lexis you'll notice that it just doesn't have nearly as much detail as far as where it locates this particular issue, this particular topic within like its outline of the law. It's got a few places that kind of give us a general idea of where it is, but it's not like the really granular focus that we have with Westlaw. So it's not nearly as specific, and it's not going to be nearly as useful to use the outline itself to navigate to the various issues. So that's head notes. It's a really powerful tool. You'll want to incorporate it into your legal research in the fourth step of that legal research process when you're researching cases, and particularly when you're trying to use cases to find more cases. Okay, that's all I have for now. Until next time.